Welcome back to Fusion 360 for Woodworkers. This episode is our last episode, you're probably pleased to know. We're going to do a little bit more work on drawings, deep diving on those, and also look how to create cutlass and bill of materials. That sounds good? Stick around. In the last episode, we orientated ourselves with the drawing pane, understood how to access it, and we created a few simple drawings around some of the larger sub-assemblies that we have. What I want to do now is to take one of those sub-assemblies, the carcass, and I want to show how we can use that and then dig down into some of the components to actually start to create drawings that are useful to us. Let's get straight into it and have a look at that. So I'm going to come back into my bookcase design, and now I'm going to come up to carcass here. And I'm going to right click on carcass, and from the menu I'm going to create drawing. Now we get the drawing menu back, and now I've already got the content. It's a selection. Remember last time we had full assembly? This time we've got a selection, and there's one thing selected, and that's the carcass. I could just as easily expand that and say, actually I want to select that, and that would select those key components there, 9 selected. Or just select the carcass in the way that we're doing it. What's my destination? Do I want to create a new drawing? Well, I don't actually, but look what's appeared on my drop down list. That drawing we're working on, Bookcase Design 2020 version 41 drawing. So I'm going to select that. What sheet do I want to use? Do I want to create a new sheet? Or look at this, another new item has appeared, sheet 1, which is that one we just made. Well, I don't want to put this on the same sheet. You may do, but I don't. So I'm going to create a new sheet. Same size, okay. Now that's going to open up my drawing, and it's going to create a new sheet for me. And we're going to, first of all, just left click once to put that in the middle. And you can see I've now got my drawing menus. Well, the orientation still makes sense as front. I still want the visible edges selected. I'm going to scale it up, and we'll do a 1 to 20 again, I think. 1 to 20, perfect. And my tangent edges I want to be full length, doesn't matter on this diagram, and we will OK that. And now it's give me the diagram that we're going to be working on. Now this is still sub-assembly, but you can see down here it's added that second sheet that we're working on. Sheet 1 was that one we worked on. Sheet 2 is this next one down, which is taking the first part, the carcass. So I'm going to go into my block down here, and I'm going to change overview diagram to carcass sub assembly. Now once you finish typing this, don't forget to type return. If you just finish it, you'll lose the update. So return, then finish the properties. So now I've got a meaningful title here on this carcass sub assembly. This one is still called Overview Diagram, just remember that in the sheet. My next one is Carcass Sub-Assembly. Now I'm less concerned about the dimensions on this one, and I'm more concerned about the component parts. So the only thing I'm going to add down here is the table. Click on the table. I'm going to bring the table down to this bottom left hand corner, like so. You can see there's a lot of details here. And now you can see what it's done. It's saying on my sub-assembly I've got a base panel, I've got a left panel, a top panel, drawer divider sub-assembly, a mid-shelf sub-assembly, I've got a back, I've got a top moulding, and I've got some internal panels, which sounds good to me. So we can tidy this up. I'm going to bring the 7 up to there, I'm going to bring the 2 up to there, slide that one up, the 5 can go up to here, that's good, 3 can go up to there, 8 can go into there, that's an internal panel, so let's just slide it up a little bit. The 4 is a drawer side assembly. I'm going to bang that over to there, and I can slide that one across, and then the base can come down to there. I'm just going to change the 8, so I'm going to pick up that panel there, and I'm going to move the balloon over there like so. Perfect, that looks a bit better. Now this orientation here looks a bit messy to me, so I can change the numbering orders on these bubbles. If I come to the tables menu and pull down renumber, Specify starting number, then select existing balloons or bend identifiers. Balloons and bend identifiers are renumbered based on the order they are selected. Fantastic. Going to come to that menu. Gives me two simple things. What number do you want to start with, or number 1, and what's your selection? So I'm going to start up here in this top corner, and that's going to be number 1. Now look what's happened. That's changed down here in the table as well. Watch the 5 in the table. That's now come down to number 2. That'll be number 3. That'll be number 4. That'll be number 5. That'll be number 6. And that'll be number 7. Now, although we couldn't change the components order we looked at earlier on, we can certainly change this order here. So if you want to, you can set these in the sequence you're going to build them, or you can just make it look pretty, or you can just leave it as the default. The choice is yours. But I've now created my carcass subassembly. Now, just for illustration, I'm going to create one more diagram that we can have a look at, and that's just going to be number 6. It's going to be these internal panels, because they've got some interesting joinery on that we could have a look at, and also they're multiple objects. They were copies, if you remember, and I want to show you how that works. So I'm going to come back into our bookcase design. I'm going to find my internal panels, which was here, and I'm just going to select the subassembly internal panels, and I'm going to create a drawing. It's that one selection. It's not a new drawing. I want to put it into the drawing I'm working on. It's a new sheet. It's still A4. Okay, nothing new to us there. And now you can see it's put in place there 4 of those panels. Now, the front orientation here is not a lot of use to me, so what I want to do is to actually say, let's look at the right orientation so I can see those panels face on, and that's okay. Now that's still got 4 assemblies. That goes backwards into space, you can't see it. Now what I'm going to do, I'm going to actually just hide those panels. Just turn the eye off, that one, and that one. So they're not on my diagram at all. I'm going to come back into here, and I'm going to change the scale to be 1 to 20 so we can see what we're doing. I now want to create some projections of this, so we'll do a drawing projected view. Click on that, and I'll have a projection there. I'm going to have a projection there, a projection there, and because this endpoint is a dovetail, do I need a projection there? We'll put it in, we can always take it out overall. And I'm just going to put a 3D projection somewhere, maybe up there for the time being, so we can see. I might delete these and play around with them. Okay, so I don't like that projection. I'm going to click it and then just delete it. And looking at this, I don't think I need this bottom projection either, so I'm going to delete that. I'm just going to work on these. So you can see I've now got my elevation looking from the rear, and I've got my elevation looking from the front, and an elevation looking from the top. But before I put the dimensions on, I'm just going to drop the table in. So I'll bring in my table, and I'm going to drop the table down here. You can see the table hasn't got many columns in it at all. All it's got is an internal panel. Item number 1, internal panel that's made of pine. Let's add some more details. I want to put in the part number, so we now know the part number is 1.8. That's important to us. And the quantity. And look at this, it's telling me the quantity is 4. So although I've only got the diagram of 1, because they were copies, and I've just hid them, not suppressed them, it knows I need 4 instances of these internal panels, which is pretty useful. Description would give me the overall dimensions of that panel, and I can close that down. It's interfering a little bit here with my table, so I can grab the handle and move that over. Oh my gosh, no, I don't like that one. Now what I want to do, I just want to move these down a little bit over here, and I'm going to move this one down as well, because I want to put the table at the top this time. I'll show you why in a second, but I do want to drop a table in here. So let's click on our table. This time I'm going to snap into the top corner up there. And look what it's giving me by default. The item number is this item number here, 1. Well, I don't really care about that. 4 of these, so I need to make 4 of these panels exactly the same. And when we built the bookcase many weeks ago now, this was a copy. You know, we used This was a copy. I think we used a pattern tool to make these, and that was a corrected copy. I've got the unique part number 1.8, so I know it's 0.8 assembly of subassembly number 1. It's called the internal panel. There's my descriptions, and I know it's made of pine. I'm going to click on that and just drag it to the end because I've got OCD and I like things to line up. So let's drop some dimensions into this. Click on our dimensioning tool. We'll click up the top one there, and we'll come right down to the bottom, and I'll move that across so we know the overall size is 1228. But I also want to just zoom in a little bit and just look at these sliding dovetails that we've got here in the middle. I think the bottom one was a sliding dovetail. This was a, yeah, this was that sort of stock dado, wasn't it? But let's just put these in as well. Now if you just click on one, not even click, just rest on one of those lines, you can see how it snaps in. It's snapping in from the shoulder line of that top dovetail, and it's snapping into the shoulder line of that dado. So just click on that line there, and I can just drag that across, and you can see that starts to give me a good view. So the dimensioning tool, so now I can do the same here, and I can slide that across to the same place, and now I can do the same on the bottom again, and it's picking up those shoulders there. You can see it's dropped my number in a strange place. It's not that clever, so I'm going to escape from the tool. I'm going to click on these bottom arrows here. I'm just going to drag down that number to about there, I think. Yep, that looks good to me. So now we can start to see we've got some dimensions. We're going to make a panel 1228 high. I'm coming down for the dovetail shoulder 512, 514, so that works pretty well. So the next thing is, let's just put some sizes on these little dovetails themselves. Now I can either do it on this panel, or I can actually come ahead and do it on this panel. So let's add some dimensions to this panel. First of all, let's see how wide it's going to be. So just rest on that top box there, so I know it's 253 wide. I'm going to zoom straight into here. I'm going to select on that point and that point and just scale that out. So I now know that that's 6 millimeters. Highlight it and just move the little box up so it looks a bit better, like that. Back into dimensioning tool, I want that point and that point. I'm going to bring that out to about there, and now come down to this one, that point, to that point, there. Looks good to me. And then we can just pick up this bottom dovetail here as well, that point to that point, sure that's also 6 millimeters. So now you're beginning to see you've got everything that you need here to give you the dimensions of your panel. Make sense? We need to know the length of this sliding dado. So I'm just going to come in and just see that, just hover on that. I'm going to come right in so you can see it. See how it's hovering on this? It's picking up to that center point there automatically. Great, that'll do. So I know it's 2, 3, 4. And now let's pick up on this curve. And you see how I said it's clever and it works out what you want. It's now telling me the radius of that curve is 9, which it is, which is fantastic. So I'll do that. So, oops, daisy. So we now know that we've got an 18 millimeter slot. We know it's 234 millimeters long with a circle that's got a radius of 9 millimeters at the end of it. So now we've got quite a lot of information that we need on that panel. Now there's a few things I don't know. I don't know how deep this is. So let's look on this panel here, because that now shows us the depth of that. Now there's no way you're going to get in to see the detail, so I'm going to enlarge this. Go up to the top, and I've got this tool here, Detail View. Shows a specific portion of a view at an enlarged scale. So we'll use that tool. I'm going to click on the middle here, like so, and then click again, and I'm just going to extend that circle. You can see that's giving me a view now. It's called A. When I'm happy with that view, click once, and now that gives me enlargement of that piece, and I'll put that up here. Once I've got that, I can then come in and make it bigger. So what would happen if I were to go to 1 to 5? Yeah, that's looking quite good, a lot of detail there. Okay, so what that now does, it takes this segment I put a circle in and calls it A, and it enlarges it up here, and it puts at the top of that a label, A. And you can see it's A, it's a scale of 1 to 5. So I can grab my little grey box and bring it down so it makes more sense. If I want to, I can move that A bit closer to it so you can really see, yeah, that's what I'm talking about. And now I can put some measurements on here. Dimension tool, I want to pick up that point and that point, and I'm showing that they are 6 millimeters deep. That point to that point, showing me it's 18 millimeters wide. That's a bit close, so I'm going to escape, click on the A and just move that out of the way a little bit. In fact, I might move it down. Yeah, going to move it down. I'm going to click on this A and I'm going to drag that A down there. Perfect. So we now know we've got an exploded view of A that gives us those details that we couldn't quite see before. I can now come into this one and let's do the same on these dovetails. So we come once again, we're going to come in with a detailed view. Click on the center of my dovetail once, click twice and make my circle, and you can see that's now called that B, which is good. Come up to here and we know we want to make that a 1 to 5. Okay, I didn't catch up, so I've now got that in place. So I can now do the same here. I can go with my dimensioning tool. I want the back of my dovetail, which is 18 millimeters. I want the front of my dovetail, which is 14 millimeters. I want the depth of my dovetail, which is 6 millimeters. And I want the angle of my dovetail. Now it's not picking up that angle, so if I come up to my dimensioning tool and scroll down till I get angular dimension, measures the angle of a rounded edge or the angle between 2 points or edges. Perfect. Click on that edge and that edge, and you can now see that's 108, or more importantly, how can I get it to say that? There you go. That's a 72 degree angle from there. So I now know that my dovetail is 6 millimeters deep, it's 18 millimeters at the back, it's 14, and in this particular case I'm using a 72 degrees angle. Good, got the tool, now tidy it up a little bit. I'm going to move that B. That looks good. So what else do I need to know? Well, I've got this dovetail here at the top, so let's have a look at that dovetail. Again, I'm going to come in my detail view, click on my dovetail twice, make my circle, call that B. I'm going to put the component up here and we're going to make it a 1 to 5. Okay. And now we can measure this one again. So dimensions, we do the top dimension, which should 18 millimeters, no surprise. From that shoulder to that shoulder, we know is 14 millimeters, and from that angle to that angle, we know is, there we go, 18 degrees, which would make sense. I can just move that 18 degrees up a little bit. Okay, so we now know the other side of our dovetail. So there you go, that's looking pretty good to me. Just going to move that C15 down a little bit so it's not in the way. Good, so we can now see we've got all the dimensions we need to go ahead and make that panel. So that's pretty much how you do drawings. Now it's simply a matter of repeating that for every component that you want to show your engineering or your workshop drawing for. I'm going to go ahead now and just complete all the components for this sub-assembly we're working on, so you can start to get your ideas around the flow. And then I want to come back in and just show a slightly different technique we can use with tables if you want to tidy your drawings up. I'll see it in a second. So I've now got all of the components done inside our sub-assembly. I just want to bring you back in and show you a feature that we can use with tables that's really neat, and I only discovered this one recently, so I wanted to share it with you. This is the sub-assembly that I've done for the large shelves. You can see here on the table at the top I'm saying I've got 2 small shelves, part numbers 2.4.1 and 2.4.5 with the description and the pine, and down here I've created a small shelf view and a large shelf view, and that's really neat and tidy. But if we go back into our original design and we look at that mid-shelf assembly, it's actually a sub-assembly of all these components. Now, I've got the same problem here on the draw divider subassembly, or the same approach, because remember what we did? We created one long shelf and then I used these internal partitions to divide it up into its sub-components. Now watch what happens here. If I just click on my draw divider subassembly, which is this bottom one down here, and go into create drawing as we would normally, it's not a new drawing, it's from my sketch, and I want to create a new sheet. Okay. When I put this in, look what happens. It's actually showing the full subassembly. So if I bring up this, if I increase the scale to 1 to 20 so we can see it, and we come down from the top view, you can see it's created all of those shelves. And if I were to bring in the table for this, the default table, you can see it lists out all the individual components, and that might be what you want, but as you start to put in the various details around this, it's going to get messy. And if you look at that for review as opposed to that for review, I think this one is much easier to work with. So how do we get from this drawing to this drawing? Well, let me show you the technique. First of all, I'm going to delete this page, right click on the page at the bottom here and delete the sheet. And I'm going to go back in to our assembly. So this time, rather than creating the entire subassembly, I'm just going to select one component, small left shelf, and I'm going to create a new drawing from that one component. I still do the same design book, so we'll select that one and we'll OK that. So it brings up our panels always, and this time it's only put that one component in place. Makes sense? We'll go for a top-down view and we'll go for a scale of 1 to 5. OK. So I've now got a simple view of that shelf. So now I want to come in and I want to do a projection. So we'll click on that once and I'll drag that over, and that's giving me a projection from one of the edges. But I also want to pick up these dovetails. So I'm going to do a second projection, don't matter which, just bring that down, purely because I want to be able to look at these dovetails at the end and do some modelling of those dovetails. What I want to do now is to drop the large shelf next to it. So I'm going to come back into Bookcase Design. This time I'm going to pick up on one of the large shelves, doesn't matter which one, create a drawing. We're going to put it into the same book, but I don't want to create a new sheet. I want to put that on the last sheet that we did, number 8. Okay, that opens the same sheet, and now I can drop that in next to it like so. Again, I want a top-down view, and again, I want a 1 to 5 ratio. And now we can just drag these around so they all look nice and pretty and all line up. Something like that, I think looks good. Move that one over a little bit more. Perfect. So now I can come along and say, right, I want to measure from that point to that point, 578. That point to that point, 286, that point to that point, 18, and that point to that point, 253. So I now know the sizes of these. I want to come in and just do some measurements on this dovetail here. It's a bit small, so let's use one of our explosion diagrams there onto that end, and we'll put it down here. Just going to change that letter D to letter A, and we'll keep this at the 1 to maybe 1 to 8, maybe bigger. Oops, maybe 1 to 4, 1 to 2. Yeah, 1 to 2 is good, gives me some details. Okay, so that's nothing that we haven't done before, but that then allows me to come in and just measure that dovetail. So my end of my dovetail I know is 18, the inside of my dovetail I know is 14, my dovetail is going to be 6 millimeters deep, dimensions, angular dimension, just zoom in so I can pick it up, I want dimensions, angular dimension, that to that, which we know is 72. Okay. Let's remove that A2. Oops. Then move the A2 titles here so it makes a bit more sense. And just swing the A around so you can see what we're doing. So now we understand exactly what these look like, and that's a much cleaner diagram, and that's all the information that I need. Okay, so we'll just give this a name. Come down to the bottom box. They're not mid shelves. These are draw. Crikey. Draw the dividers. Don't forget to return. Finish the project. Now the final thing you'd normally do here is drop in a table. So let's get the table. Now look at the tool. The tool's confused. It's saying, what's the reference? You've got so much going on the diagram. You've got this piece and this piece. I don't know what my reference is. So you need to select a drawing view. Now pull down on this. You can put an empty table in, or we can select a component. We're going to come back to empty table, but let's just select a drawing and say, well, let's just go on the large shelf. And let's just snap in the large shelf to the top corner. Now you can see it's done exactly what we expect it to do. It's given us a quantity, a part number, a large centre shelf, etc. And say it's point number 3, we just delete that 3. But that's not really that useful because I've got multiple parts. I've got 3 of these shelves, not just one of these shelves. And yes, I could list all of those shelves out, but that's just going to be incredibly messy. It's going to be a lot easier if it says 3 part numbers, large shelves. The problem with this table is you can't edit the content. All this table content is derived from the properties that we put inside here earlier on, wherever they've gone to. It's all derived from the information inside that window. And you can't override it inside the table. So we could come ahead and say, okay, fine, let's just put the second shelf in, and it's that one there, and I'm going to snap it into this one. And you can see you can start to build up your bill of materials, but it's just messy. So let's look at a different way of doing it. I'm just going to take these shelves, because I want the information inside it. I'm just going to drop these down here at the bottom for a while, just so I can see the information inside them. I'll do the same with that one. Now I'm going to come back into my table tool, but this time I'm going to say I want to put an empty table in here. And look what it does. It gives me an empty table, which is exactly what you'd expect. And it's nothing harder than, I guess, like an Excel spreadsheet, and you can just fill in the details that you want inside that table quite well. So let's look at this. We've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 columns. So I want to add a column up here. This is your blank table menu bar, and I can edit the columns and I can edit the rows. So I can put a new column at the end. So I'll click that. Now I've got 5 columns inside there. I can now type inside here. So let's call the top one part lists, like that. Make it the same look and feel. We then know down here we've got quantity. Then we've got part number. So we can actually recreate the same look and feel of our table, which is great. Now quantity 1, we need 2, and we're going to call these small shelves. The description we've got down here, its length is 286 by width of 253 by thickness of 18, and we know the material here is pine. We'll just sort out the size of this. So we know we want the quantity to be a little bit smaller, about there. Part number probably looks about right. Part name, we want it to be a little bit longer, and then we want the part description to be longer and the material to be a bit longer as well. So I can just shape this up now so it looks something like, and that's looking not too bad now, I don't think. And then stretch it to the end. I can now want quantity 3, and I want these to be the large shelves. The length we know is 578. The width is again 253. And the thickness we know is 18, and we know that's also going to be in pine. Now it's not the most user-friendly of tables to play with here. So I'm going to take that space out. So don't expect, word processor type qualities, but it gets the job done. I want to take that bottom column out here, that bottom row out, sorry. So I'll just come to my menu and click that out and close that out. Now I want to put the part numbers in. So my small shelves are, we know, 2.7.1 and 2.7.5, so it's 2.7.2. And then we know that the large shelves are 2.7.1. And now I can delete these tables. So what I end up with now is a sheet that, yes, it's got multiple components on, but I've grouped them together by putting a custom table inside there. So there you go. So that's pretty much everything. You can start to see how this comes together. We have the main list here. So here's the big moving parts, the big chunks of things I'm going to build. I then take the first sub-assembly, the carcass. Here's the moving parts of the sub-assembly. I then take the components inside that. So here's my base panel, here's my top panel, here's my left panels and my right side panels, here's my internal panels, here's my midpoint shelves, and here's my base shelves. So you can really start to see how your design comes together, and obviously what you do, you take each of those component parts and you break them down in the same way. Now, word of warning, drawings and diagrams in Fusion are pretty complex. It's also pretty frustration. It does feel like it's a relatively new module inside Fusion of how you create these drawings, and it's nowhere near as slick as some of the other parts. But it is there, and you can do it in that way, and the good news is it's dynamically linked. So if you were to go back now and resize and rescale your design, that would update your drawings for you. Two more things I want to quickly show you before we log off on this series. The first one is how to insert an image. Dead easy, but somewhat useful. And the second one is bill of materials. Not quite as exciting as you would think, but let's get into it right now. I'm just going to put a front cover on here, and that will show us the use of the import command. Down at the bottom here, you've got this big plus sign, quick add. And if I add that, it just gives me a page, a blank page. I can move that page, so I'm going to take that page in this bottom menu and I'm going to drag it to the left so it becomes sheet number 1. And I'm just going to delete the bits I don't want, so I'm going to select that outside frame and delete it. I'm going to select the text box and I'm going to delete that as well, and it just gives me a rather nice blank page. I'm going to come into Insert and I'm going to select Image. Insert a selected image into the current sheet. Import from my computer, and over here on the desktop we should have that 3D image we created a couple of episodes ago, and you can just plonk that anywhere. You can change it here, so you can change the X distance, which would start to move it left and right for you. You can change the Y distance, so it will move you up or down. You can rotate it if you really feel the need, to 0, and you can scale it up as well. Or you can OK that, and if you just select the outside edge of that, you get the grey grab handles. So now I can just quickly move that around, put it into the centre there. Without a title, so I'm going to come into the text box. Text, specify the corners for the text box and enter the text. I think we've used this before. Just going to come down here and click there twice, and we'll call this Bookcase 2020 design, and then I can just click off that. I want to change the size. If I click on it again, I can use a grab handle and I can move it around. If I click on it twice and select all the text, I can then come into the height and I can just simply select that 5, maybe a bit bigger than that, maybe 10. Yeah, that will do. And then I can center that, close it down, and then I can just move it into position. So quickly you can start to create a front cover, and that's something you probably see on most of my diagrams. So we've done the render, we've got the 3D image of what we're going to build, I've got the bookcase design, and then straight into the big sub-assemblies, and then we break it down. So there you go, that's how you insert images and make those front covers that you see on most of my drawings. Final thing I want to talk about now is the bill of materials, the cutting list, if you will. Sadly, Fusion is pretty poor at creating this cutting list. Better news, there's some plugins that you can use that actually make this quite useful to you. So we'll quickly have a look at how Fusion would handle it, and then I want to show you how I do it using a plugin called Bomber. That is a paid plugin, it's not free, there is a free trial, but it is paid, but there are free versions that you can also go and play with. Let's look at the way that we do it natively inside Fusion. So to create a cut list, the tables that we've been playing with, that is it. That is a cut list. And as you know, we can create those tables manually, or we can create them automatically depending on this. Now, flicking back to the design, all the way through I've been creating sub-assemblies, and I do that because it just makes it easier to understand what I'm doing and start to create a workflow of how I'm going to build it. It tidies that menu up, if you will. Now the problem of doing that when you come to cut lists is if I was to select all these component parts here, the ones I actually want to do, the table will always default back up to the topmost sub-assembly. So that will only ever say to me on a table, hey, I'm number 1 and I'm the carcass, and that's of no use to me. Now if I select these individually, that doesn't happen. So the way to create a cut list is one component at a time, which, trust me, is painful. What you would do, click on your base panel, right click, create a drawing. You're going to put that into the existing area, and we're going to create a new sheet. Okay. That will bring up our blank panel. Put your component off to the side somewhere because you don't really care about it, and press OK. Click on your table and add a table. Then delete the number 4 because you don't want it. Come in to your side menu and hide the image. There you go. You've now created the first part of your table. You'd then come back into your design. You'd then pick on the next one, the left panel. You'd create a drawing. You would add the drawing to the existing drawing diagram. You'd put it onto sheet number 10, the one we just created, and you'd click OK. We'd put the diagram off to the side and press OK. We'd then come up with the table. We'd put the table under the one we just created. Then we'd delete the bubble, and then we would hide the left panel. And then we go and do the next one. And you'd start to build up your bill of materials one component at a time. And it does work, but by gosh, it's painful. Now once you've got a table, the other thing that you may want to do is to export the table, and you can highlight a table, click on output, and then output to CSV, and that will just take it. But once again, you're going to have to do that one table at a time. Now there's a better way of doing that, and like a lot of programs, Fusion does have a strong community behind it and a strong community of developers. I think it's Python code if you're into that sort of stuff, and you can create Python scripts, and people do that. And you can get those Python scripts and you can plug them into Fusion, and some of those scripts give you bill of material functionality. To access it, come back into your bookcase design and go to the tool menu at the top. Normally we're working in the solid state here, but come along to the tool menu, and underneath tools there's a thing called add-ins. Underneath add-ins there's things called the Fusion 360 App Store. Click on that. That takes you to a website which is the Autodesk App Store for Fusion 360. In the search applications, put BOM, B-O-M, Bill of Materials. And there's a number of plugins here that you can use. CSV BOM is free, and that will take all of your components, all the details inside the components, and output them to a CSV file. From there you've got your bill of materials. Thumbnail BOM will do something similar, but it will also give you a pretty picture on there that you can print or create to a PDF, and again that's free. Data Pro will also do it. It's paid, it's £2.90 a month subscription. OpenBOM is a good one, again that's free and that will do it, but I find the user interface a bit of a mess behind that. Now there's this new one here, CSE Furniture Tools. It's only Windows 64 and I use a Mac system, so I've not played with this one, but I will be doing it in the future, so you might want to play with that. It's got the promise of taking your designs and automating the entire flow of your documentation, your cut lists and everything else. So it does seem really, really, really good. So I will be playing with that one and I'll let you know if I like it or not. But the one I'm currently using is Bomber. Works on Mac and works on Windows. So once you've got that, you just go ahead and you sign up and you install it. Once you've got it installed, you come back into your add-ins menu and you then look at this menu, scripts and add-ins, manage scripts and add-ins. And on the second pane, add-ins, you'll see the things that you've just installed, and the one we're interested in is Bomber. You click on that and then you go ahead and you run it, and this menu up here appears. Now I'm not going to give you a tutorial on Bomber. You can do all sorts of great things inside it. I find it a lot easier to rename, renumber my components, add details to it, rather than going through the properties, which is one of the things I find attractive. But it's got this facility here called Export, and that's going to export it directly for us. So click on Export, and this is now going to give you an export dialog. What do you want to do? Hierarchical is great for us because we use sub-assemblies. So that's going to give me part number 1, part 1.1, part 1.1.2, etc. I can include the root components, which is the part 1 if you wish, and so on and so forth. So you can choose what it is you look and feel. You've also got a flat one, which is a great big long list, and then just parts, which are things that aren't sub-assemblies. I like hierarchy, it gives me some structure behind it. And then there's all this information, all the metadata that Fusion captures is available to here. The item number, a picture of it, part name, whether I've ticked exclude or include, and so on and so forth. And more importantly to us, it gives us the bounding box information. If you remember when we're looking at properties, the bounding box tells us how thick something is, long something is. This will export that data as well, and it's dynamic. So if we then update our drawing, the bounding box information updates, I just re-export my bill of materials, and I've got the up-to-date data, which is super powerful, and another one of the reasons I go for it. So you press OK. That will then go away and think about it. It will start to churn all the data, bring it all together, and export it for you. And then it says, what do you want to export it as? Do I want to export it to Excel, to CSV, or to a JSON file? Well, I'll export it to Excel, why not? I'll give it a name, I'll print it out on the desktop, let's call it BOM test, and save it. And then it says, do you want to have a look at it? Yes please. And you can see what it's done, it's exported the information. It's got some nice pictures of the component, it's got the name, the part number, the information, either whether it's a sub-assembly or whatever it may be, whether you're going to buy it or make it, how many of them you need, the material, and the bounding box information, which is, I say, updates whenever you update your drawing. I tend to tidy this table up and then I export it as a PDF, and I end up with a document that looks like this, which is my cut list. It shows me every single part. I put a little box in so I can tick it, a little box so I can write notes as I'm going through, and then I include that as part of my drawing set. So there you go, Fusion, pretty rubbish at bill of materials. You can do it, it's painful, I don't bother. Something like Bomber or the other applications we looked at, fantastic for doing that type of work, and much better results. Now that's it, that's the end of our course. We have now modelled and built our bookcase, and we've created the drawings. I will be finishing the drawings off, as well as the cut list that we just had a look at, and all that's available as part of the YouTube bundle over on the website. So if you want to access this course again, it's easy to access there. I'll include the Fusion model that I built out in its raw format, so you can import it and play with it. I'll also include the bill of materials. I'll probably also include the layout diagram that I use in a separate piece of software called Cutlist Pro, and that we're not going to cover, but that will also give you a cut list if you're going to make this. So I hope you found this useful. Thank you for watching. Leave your comments down below. Let me know if you want to see more Fusion related stuff, because this is probably the last video I'm going to make on Fusion for quite a while. Having said that, I'll see you in the workshop next week. Take care.